प्रजापतये दैवी स्वस्तिरस्तु नः स्वस्तिर्मानुषेभ्यः ऊर्ध्वञ्जिगातु भेषजम् शन्नो अस्तु द्विपदे शञ्चतुष्पदे ॐ शान्तिः 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 सहस्रशीर्षा पुरुषः सहस्राक्षः सहस्रपात् स भूमिम् विश्वतो वृत्वा अत्यतिष्ठद्दशाङ्गुलम् पुरुष एवेदगम् सर्वम् यद्भूतं यच्च भूयम् उतामृतत्वस्येषा नः यदन्नेनातिरोहति एतावानस्य महिमा अतो ज्यायागिश्च पूरुषः पादोऽस्य विश्वाभूतानि त्रिपादस्यामृतम् दिवि त्रिपादूर्ध्व उदैत्पुरुषः पादोऽस्येहा भवात् पुनः ततो विश्वं व्यक्रामत् शासनानशने अभि तस्माद्विराडजायत विराजो अधिपूरुषः स जातो अत्यरिच्यत पश्चाद्भूमिमथो पुरः यत्पुरुषेण हविषा देवा यज्ञमतन्वत वसन्तो अस्यासीदाज्यम् ग्रीष्म इध्मः शरद्धविः सप्तास्यासन् परिधजः त्रिः सप्त समिधः कृताः देवागद्यज्ञम् तन्वानाः अबध्नन् पुरुषम् पशुम् तं यज्ञम् बर्हिषि प्रोक्षन् पुरुषम् जातमग्रतः तेन देवा अयजन्त साध्या ऋषयश्च ये तस्माद्यज्ञात् सर्वहुतः सम्भृतम् वृषदाज्यम् पशोगस्तागिश्चक्रे वायम् यान् आरण्यान् ग्राम्याश्च ये तस्माद्यज्ञात् सर्वहुतः ऋचः सामानि जज्ञिरे छन्दागुंसि जज्ञिरे तस्मात् यजुस्तस्मादजायत तस्मादश्वा अजायन्त ये केचोभजादतः गावोह जज्ञिरे तस्मात् तस्माज्जाता अजावजः यत्पुरुषम् व्यदधुः कतिधा व्यकल्पयन् मुखम् किमस्य कौ बाहू कावूरूपादावुच्येते ब्राह्मणोऽस्य मुखमासीत् बाहूराजन्यः कृतः ऊरू तदस्य यद्वैश्यः पद्भ्यागम् शूद्रो अजायत चन्द्रमा मनसो जातः चक्षोः सूर्यो अजागत मुखादिन्द्रश्चाग्निश्च प्राणात् वायुरजायत नाभ्या आसीदन्तरिक्षम् शीर्ष्णोद्यौः समवर्तत पद्भ्याम् भूभिर्दिशः श्रोत्रात् तथा लोकागम् अकल्पयन् वेदाहमेतम् पुरुषम् महान्तम् आदित्यवर्णम् तमसस्तु पारे सर्वाणि रूपाणि विचित्य धीरः नामानि कृत्वाभिवदन् यदास्ते धाता पुरस्ताद्यमुदा जहार चक्रः प्रविद्वान् प्रदिशश्च तस्रः तमेवम् विद्वानमृत इह भवति नान्यः पन्था अयनाय विद्यते यज्ञेन यज्ञमजन्त देवाः ता यानि धर्माणि प्रथमान्यासन् ते हनाकम् महिमानः सचन्ते यत्र पूर्वे साध्याः सन्ति देवाः अध्यः सम्भूतः पृथिव्यैरसाच्च विश्वकर्मणः समवर्तताधि तस्य त्वष्टा विदधद्रूपमेति तत्पुरुषस्य विश्वमाजानमग्रे वेदाहमेतम् पुरुषम् महान्तम् आदित्यवर्णम् तमसः परस्तात् तमेवम् विद्वानमृत इह भवति नान्यः पन्था विद्यते जनाय प्रजापतिश्चरति गर्भे अन्तः अजायमानो बहुधा विजायते तस्य धीराः परिजानन्ति योनिम् मरीचीनाम् पदमिच्छन्ति मेधसः यो देवेभ्य आतपति यो देवानाम् पुरोहितः पूर्वो यो देवेभ्यो जातः नमो रुचाय ब्राह्मये रुचम् ब्राह्मम् जनयन्तः देवा अग्रे तदब्रुवन् यस्त्वैवम् ब्राह्मणो विद्यात् तस्य देवा असन्वशे ह्रीश्च ते लक्ष्मीश्च पत्न्यौ अहोरात्रे पार्श्वे नक्षत्राणि रूपम् अश्विनम् व्याप्तम् इष्टम् मनिषाण अमुम् मनिषाण सर्वम् मनिषाण ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः.
Namaste. Let's do the opening prayer. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So welcome to the 14th class of Purusha Suktam. Hope you're all doing well. So today we will start a new mantra, which I will start in a few minutes. There's a couple of things that I want to cover before we get there, however, and so let me cover those points. So as we saw earlier, that the Purusha himself entered into, by creating the Adi Purusha, which is Brahmaji, he entered as a conscious being into that. So the Brahmaji is not any different from Ishvara. It is just that the Brahmaji is a reflection of Ishvara. So just like we enter our reflection, it is nobody else other than us who is visible to us. So similarly here, Ishvara first created Brahmaji, and then thereafter he created the entire universe consisting of both conscious as well as inert beings. Very much like a dream, as you and I do. In the dream also, we create a number of objects that are inert. So we can see tables and chairs and so on, and a few people who are moving, talking to us, and so on and so forth. So it's a mixture of both of them. But the interesting thing is that both the inert as well as the conscious beings in a dream are nothing but a reflection of your own consciousness. It's nothing other than that. So in a way it is to look at it is that it is a inert consciousness and a conscious consciousness. So consciousness is common, but the inertness and the conscious being through their Sukshma Sharira differ from each other. Anyway, going back to the Srishti, the very creation that we saw. So there Purusha directly entered Brahmaji, and the difference was that Brahmaji, his reflection was so clear and so close to Ishvara's that he knew exactly what was going on. He knew that I am just a Brahmaji is also a transient, because it's a reflection, and so he of course presides over this for 100 million years as this whole kalpa goes, and then his position is changed, and so he's there for 100 million years, and so that is one thing. Then after that, you and I are created in the sense that whatever we were before the kalpa, the whole thing is woken up, and so there is continuity. There's no real creation. We have talked about all of this, so this is just a quick summary of what we did before. Anyway, so in that standpoint, the creation of the human beings, animals, and so on, from the creation of Brahmaji has one difference, though that was cha jataha atyarichyata. So there is an atiriktaha. Atiriktaha means that there is something missing. What is missing? We have really pretty much the same type of a creation. We still have bodies and minds and sense organs and prana. Everything is the same. It is just that our identification is not full of knowledge. So we are identified with our body-mind complex. We think we are a limited being, as opposed to knowing that I am an unlimited being who is associated with this limited being. So that will come later. But initially, we are tinged with ignorance about exactly what is going on. So this is the magic. So now here, one important thing to see, and this is what I wanted to point out, the Shastra says that Ishvara directly enters even the human beings and the animals. It is not as though he says, okay, I am only creating the Brahmaji and then let him do the rest of it. So the manifestation of the previous kalpa, that is all managed by Brahmaji. But as far as providing the reality and life to the human beings is concerned, Ishvara as the Brahman is directly entering into us. So you and I may not quite appreciate it, but when I say I, the conscious being, it is the same conscious being as Purusha. Same consciousness. In fact, Ishvara is directly associated with us at all points of our life. This should be appreciated. This is the point I'm bringing up. So it's not as though Ishvara says, I am just working with the bosses and the other people don't have to, I don't have to take care of them. He takes care of everybody. Now, this is very much like, and so this is the next point I want to make, and a couple of other small points like this before we go to the next mantra. So here, if you look at the magic, the semblance to a magic, because the whole thing is nothing but a magic. It's a magic show. Magic show meaning that there is some appearance without reality. That's the definition of magic. So very definition of magic means there is something going on that I don't understand, and I don't know if it is real or not. It appears very real, but after the magician, if he or she chooses to discuss how she did the magic or he did the magic, it no longer remains a magic. As will happen in our case also, when we study the whole thing very well, then the very Swarupa, the very nature of the Maya Shakti will become apparent, and the magic will cease to be. We will understand exactly what is going on. Anyway, so now Ishvara or Purusha creates both the magician as well as the people who are watching the magic, not understanding what is going on. So he is empowering both of those people. And it is very, very much like our dream, where we borrow this Shakti, this power from Ishvara, and we create a mini magic of our own. And so when we start a dream, we do two things. We have a person who is watching the dream. Then we have a world of dreams that this person is watching. And in that sense, the person who is watching is the boss, is the magician. Now, one other thing to talk about here, and that is Ishvara himself or herself. We say himself as a male thing, but it is whatever it is, not really based on gender. So we just say that as we discussed this earlier also. So it is a genderless Ishvara. So the Ishvara acts as the magician, the boss, not the boss, but the magician who is controlling the show, who's calling the shots in the show. And he's also the one who is becoming a victim of the music, of the magic. So here he develops, Swami Maheshananji points this out, he's both the master as well as a worker who is controlled by the master. Both of them. And he himself creates that position. And here there's an very interesting example. Swami Maheshananji gave this example. He says that imagine there is a big businessman, very wealthy businessman, and he's got a business going on, and one of his, this is more of a shopkeeper. Supposing in India you have a big shop with dozens of people working for him. And one of them is called Munim. So Munim is the guy who is controlling all the people. He's not the owner, but he's the principal assistant to the owner. Okay? This is the setup. Now there's a person who approaches them and said, I need some charity because I'm supporting some my neighborhood children and so on and so forth, and I need some money. So he approaches the owner. The owner tells him, please go see the Munim. He will take care of you. Because I don't have any direct control over cash. He's the one who doles out the cash. He will take care of you. So this person goes to the Munim and said, sir, the owner sent me to you, and I need some donations, and I need about 1,000 rupees in India. So the Munim says, oh, no, 1,000 rupees, no, we cannot give. We can only give 200 rupees. That's the most that I cannot do any more than that. And so the person comes back to the owner and says, this Munim says they can only give me 200 rupees. So can you please raise it to 1,000 rupees? So the owner calls the Munim, and this is all a setup. It's all a setup. So the fact that he sent him to the Munim means the Munim says that only 200 rupees. So he tells the Munim, please give him 1,000 rupees. He said, sir, no, we cannot do 1,000 rupees because, he gives lots of different reasons. We don't have the money, and how will others do, and so on and so forth. So the owner turns to the guy and he says, my hands are tied. He's a very experienced guy. He's been with me for a long time. I cannot just overrule him. So this is the way it is going to be. So the person says, okay, if that's the way it is, he walks away with 200 rupees. So he goes to his house and talks to his wife and says, that owner is such a generous guy. He was ready to give me 1,000 rupees. But this Munim guy, he's so miserly. And even the owner has to listen to him. I cannot believe this. What kind of a person he's keeping? But he absolves the owner. Why are we doing this with this example is because this is exactly the setup in our world. And so Ishvara, Purusha, actually allows us to be bossed over by our mind and body. And because we are tinged with ignorance, we don't have the control over our mind, and it's a play. It's a play, meaning that it's we have to just pretend as though we are bothered by the mind and body and so on and so forth. But eventually, we can fire that Munim. He can easily fire that Munim. Suppose the Munim never gives any money to anyone, even a more deserving person, and they have a fight. So the owner will say, anyway, that's enough. You are I'm letting you go because you are just overly miserly. So he has the option of doing so, but to maintain that setup for a while, he goes through the motion of having the people go through the Munim. Very similarly is to the case that really Ishvara, if we deserve enough, and we recognize, see, this is the issue that we have. We don't recognize that Ishvara is the one who is really behind me, who's making me act like this. And I don't understand that. I really have a direct line to Ishvara, but I don't invoke it. And so I go along with it and saying, what can I do? My mind says that I have to go along with the mind. And this discussion will come a lot in this next verse called Pashu. Pashu means an animal. So this is the definition for the Pashu that will happen. But here, the setup that I wanted to give you is that this is a kind of a funny setup. So similar to the dream, there is a kind of a pretend creation of the dream. And then if something really serious happens and you want to really wake up, then you can just let go of it quickly and the whole thing disappears. Same thing will happen to us. if we have to find the right mechanism of recognizing Ishvara and being very desperate about it, and says, I've got to, right now what's happening is that we're just going along with it. And we are doing karma, and we are at the mercy of our vasanas, and we don't have the courage, we don't have the wisdom to call and to understand that this can stop. And Ishvara is waiting. He says, when is this person going to discover me? Well, it'll come. It'll come. This is why it is called, this is in Vedanta it's called the ultimate rahasyam. Rahasyam means the ultimate hiding. Very difficult to find. That you yourself are the person you are searching for. Our mind doesn't believe that. He says, what are you talking about? I'm the searcher and I'm searching. And there's a voice in the background that says, the searcher is the searched. The searcher is the searched. You yourself are the one who you're looking at yourself. And I ignore it. I don't know what they're talking about. What kind of a voice is this? Who is this that's giving me this? Let me do something else. But this background Shruti is always there. You are okay. You are already complete. You are none other than me. I am Ishvara talking. This is going to go through my entire life. One time or the other, I will say, what did you say again? The searcher is the searched. Really? Yes, the searcher is the searched. It's all the same. Then I start looking into it, and this gig is over. So this is the setup where the Ishvara, even though directly behind me, hiding behind me, is, and I am just kind of like, this is exactly what the situation is, where the children waste their time in useless pursuits, playing with dolls, marbles, and the parents say, grow up, come on, do something else now. Time to study. No, wait, I'm having a lot of fun. I'll be there later on. Finally, the mother and father really get very upset and says, stop it. So exactly this is what happens. Sometime in our life, this voice comes in and says, stop it. Don't be concerned about things that are trivial. Trivial pursuits. There was a game, as if you remember, I think I've played it, but I don't remember it very well. Trivial pursuits. And if we are really serious about it, we can question the whole thing, and Ishvara will now help us. Once that happens, there's a Western saying, God helps those who help themselves. He's always ready to help, but I should also invoke his help, and if it became between the two of us, the gig is over. So this is how the creation manifests itself. There are a very good material still to, as I was mentioning to you, that we have only covered a small percentage of the Sajato Attirichyata, Tasmad Virad Ajayata. But in the interest of making progress, I think I will stop. So now let us go to the next verse, which is not sequentially available to us in this Purusha Suktam from the Taittiriya Aranyakam. So this is from Krishna Yajurveda. As I mentioned to you, there are two possibilities why Instead of paschad bhumi matho puraha yat purushena havisha deva yajnamatanvata. Instead of that, Swami Maheshananji takes up this verse which says, Tasmat yajnat sarvahutaha sambritham prishadajyam pashugastagas-chakre vayavyana aranyan gramyaschaye. And so there's a couple of possibilities why he's taking this. And as I mentioned to you, I don't have the time to look into that. You can, it can either be the next sequence in the Shukla Yajurveda, which is normally done in the north, or that he just purposely goes back and forth in order for the story to be told in the way he sees it. And it could be that's the one that he's doing it. I don't question that. I think his unfoldment of the truth is so beautiful to me that I just follow that. So now we are going to do this verse. Tasmat yajnat sarvahutaha sambritam prishadajyam. So let's start with that. So here, this also will take, we will do a detailed study of that. It's not just going to be one or two classes, it will be more than that. That's the way I propose to do it. I hope you have the time. So, so to explain this verse, what is mentioned is that this creation, the nature of the creation, in some senses, we can now shift over to Vishnu. Vishnu the preserver, as we say. Brahmaji as the creator and Vishnu as the preserver. And Vishnu and Brahmaji are not really separate from, they may have certain roles to play, but they're all really aspects of Ishvara alone. So it's not as though Brahmaji has a different boss and Vishnu has a different boss. It is Ishvara in the form of a creator and an Ishvara in the form of the preserver. So the best definition of Vishnu's role was given by Swami Dayananji. I remember this so well. He said, there are creators who say, even this happens also, you give birth to a child, okay, and because of the nature, the baby grows and it comes out of the mother's tummy and it's born. So the husband and wife both are happy that we have a child. But suppose they don't have the capability or the time or a combination of making the child grow. What will happen? It will be a disaster. You call babysitters and babysitters don't come and you are too busy. So really speaking, the responsibility of the family is not only to give birth to the child, but also preserve their lifestyle. And preserving the lifestyle is much more difficult. Giving birth only takes about a year. And after that, it is a lifetime of supporting the... So that job is done by Vishnu. So in that sense, this next one, which is the Tasmat Yajnat Sarvahutaha, can be directly attributed to Vishnu. How? So it says that the entire Shrishti, which means the creation, is in the form of a yajna. Form of a yajna. Yajna is a very technical word in the Vedic science, as many of you know very well. So a yajna is a process of a human being doing a puja, offering to the fire, and it has three aspects to it. Yajna has three aspects of it. One of them is called dravya, and the second one is devata, and the third one is kriya. So dravya means, so the overall thing is that the human being does this sacrificial yajna. It's a sacrificial event. It's a sacrificial event where something is given up. The dravya is given up to a specific devata, and the kriya is with a purpose of a living being. The living being's purpose with the sankalpa is that this is why I'm doing this. This is why I'm giving you something. And I would like to get something as a result of this, my tyaga. So the tyaga is the dravya. The devata is chosen carefully, like we just went through Ganesha Chaturthi. So in Ganesha Chaturthi, the devata is Ganesha, and the dravya is ahuti. So the ahuti means that this has to be a combination of things that are poured into the fire, and also some combination of fruits and flowers, and a compensation to the hota, to the priest. So these are things that are given up, and also a prayerful attitude that I am not really thinking of anything else. This is what I want to do, and this is what the Vedas have prescribed. I don't know what else to do, but I'm following the Vedic injunctions in this sacrificial rite, and I'm performing it based on the correct interpretation of that by this priest. And may you please accept my sacrifice and bless me for the following causes that I'm interested in. So this is what is called yajna. Okay. Now, those are the three things that are there, which is dravya, devata, and kriya. So now so this is a general principle of yajna. Okay. Now, the shrishti is in the form of a yajna. This is a huge yajna. And this yajna encompasses everything. And as we will see later, what you have to give up, there the dravya is your connection to everything in this life. Everything which is visible to you. You are the Atma, and you are the kriya. So here kriya is in the form of jnana, as we will see. And the devata here is Vishnu. Purusha in the form of Vishnu. Or you can say directly to Ishvara. Same person, really. And the dravya is my connection, my taking myself to be part of the world. This is the dravya. So this is sarvahutaha. Tasmat yagyat sarvahutaha. So from this standpoint, the yajna, by doing this yajna, everything is offered to the fire. Everything. Tasmat yagyat sarvahutaha. This is the meaning of it. That this Srishti is in the form of a yajna, number one. Number two, the dravya is all anatma. Devata is Ishvara. And Kriya is in the form of Jnana Kriya, as we will see later. Okay? So this is the situation. Now here Swami Maheshananji pointed out something very interesting. He says that one aspect of the of yajna is homa. So those of you that are so this homa is a fire ceremony, and it has some particular aspects of it. What are the special aspects of homa that distinguishes it from yajna? It means, homa means, there is, in Sanskritam it's called sinchanam. So sinchanam means where you are dedicated to growing the yajna carefully. So just like you have a plant, and so the planting, supposing you do a new planting, supposing you just do a new planting, so now you can just put that into the ground, and then you can say, okay, that my job is done, and let the Ishvara take care of this plant. You can offer it some water from time to time. But suppose this is a very precious plant and you take care of it by cultivating it. The cultivation means that you have to offer the right amount of water at the right time, steadily. Not just once, steadily. Similarly, the homa is a special yajna where the primary, instead of water plant, instead of offering water to the plant, you offer ghee to the fire, slowly. Like Swami Maheshananji says, supposing you say, I am so busy, I don't have the time to, I actually have a couple of plants that I am taking care of in my garden, and I have to go there every day. I have to watch the soil level and make sure that it keep my wife wanted an aloe vera plant because somebody told her that her skin was very dry and itchy, and so they said the aloe vera plant is very useful. So she bought a aloe vera plant from the local nursery, and of course it was my job to plant it. And this is a special plant. If I screw this up, I'll never hear the end of it. So the other plants that I have, I neglect them, but this is for my wife, and this is very important for me. So I am actually cultivating it very carefully. Today also I went there, and I have to read up to see how often to water it. If I water it too much, it's bad. If I don't water it enough, it is bad. Similarly, in a homa, supposing you have a vessel full of ghee, You cannot pour it all out at the same time. This is not kosher. No. And if there is a swaha to be done, you better be ready with the ghee. This is called a homa. So what it means is that in this yajna, you can be casual about it and say, I'll take care of it by making sure that I have a good relationship with the people. I don't expect too much from others, and I would help others. This is an okay attitude. But to follow the advice of the Shastra on how to discover Ishvara within yourself requires a lot of dedicated cultivation. And so it is said, don't just be doing yajna. Please learn to do homa. So this is another point that Swami Maheswaranji pointed out. I had no idea about the difference between them until about 3-4 years ago when I read this. And it really is just wonderful. So now we can proceed on further. Another thing, the dravya that you offer in even a ordinary yajna. Now, after this, we will not talk about homa, because I just wanted to point out the subtle differences between a yajna and a homa, and they are all the same class, but homa is a more specific acceleration. And so acceleration means that if you do a good job of planting and watering it and so on, it will bloom. And so other than that, I won't go back to homa. Let's just stick with the general thing about yajna. So now, one of the things about the yajna is the samagri, means the things that you offer. The things that you offer have to be very clean and fresh. Like, for instance, I hope none of us ever makes the mistake of going to the local grocery store. Many of these grocery stores have fruits that have passed their prime and they are on sale at 50% off. You may want to do that for yourself, but I hope you don't ever make the mistake of buying them at 50% and offering it in a yajna. Because this is not correct. That means you are insulting the Devata. I don't care about you, all I want to do is to save some money, let's just get it over with. No. It's not the attitude. You have to do it with Shraddha, and all the fruits and flowers should be fresh to be given. Now, Swami Maheswaranji took this one up because yajnas are of different types. So just going to the local temple and having a ritual performed by a qualified priest is not the only way. So if you remember, my first introduction to Vedanta was with Swami Chinmayananji in the June of 1973, and in the local San Jose Mercury there was an article which said Swami Chinmayananda is performing a Jnana Yajna in San Francisco Lone Mountain College, Chapter 7. That was my first introduction to the word Jnana Yajna. I didn't know what a Jnana Yajna means. And so later on, with Swami Chinmayananji, of course, explained very well, and I got to know the whole thing. Yajna can be also done through knowledge. And so in that, you can actually select the study. And so there you can say the Homa. As I said, I'm not going to bring it up, but I will bring it up again. A dedicated study where this is the most important thing in your life becomes a yajna. And you sacrifice the rest of the things in your life. I don't know if I mentioned this to you or not, but after I came back from the ashram, before I went to the ashram in 1979, my favorite sport, and I'm a sports person. I used to in my young age, I used to play all kinds of stuff. My favorite one is ping pong. I can challenge any one of you, even at this age. I can really beat any one of you in ping pong. I mean, I don't know if that's true or not. You may be a champion. I don't want to take you on that. But I was a good sports person. And I was a good tennis player. Not a top-class tennis player, but a good tennis player. And after the 2.5 years of going to the ashram, I said, this has to go. And my children were growing up, and my wife encouraged me to play golf with them. And I said, no. So there was a sacrifice on my part on things that I really like to do. And because I said, you know what? This is too important for me in my life. Those things can go. I felt like for a while that I was missing it, but just went away. So in a jnana yajna, your lifestyle becomes the dravya that you sacrifice. Anyway, so that is a jnana yajna. Here, Swami Maheshananji says another one is called japa yajna. And so in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also says, amongst the rivers I am Ganga, amongst the mountains I am Himalaya, and amongst the yajna I am japa yajna. So he gives a great impetus to japa yajna. Japa yajna means to do parayanam, to talk, and to do the, this Purusha Suktam, to do this chanting, and to understand the meaning of it. This is what we are doing, japa yajna. Extremely important, very important. You don't have to go to the temple. In addition to that, if you want to go to the temple, that's fine. But this also is another way to do yajna. Now, Swami Maheshananji pointed out, listen, just like the dravya in the temple has to consist of fresh and pure bananas, apples, and roses, not faded roses, should be, and hope if possible, do it from your own garden. If not possible, buy it. So just like you carefully have the dravya to be fresh and clean, in japa yajna, your varni, your speech has to be clean and pure and fresh. So he says, what do you mean by clean varni? He says there's a lot of aspects of it, but two main aspects of a clean varni is not to lie. Not to lie. Live a life of truthfulness. Speak truth. Do not lie. This is number one. And number two is, do not be critical of others, either in your thought or in your own speech. Make your speech very positive. Always look for the good qualities in the others. If some thought comes about their deficiencies, let it go. Let it go. Don't follow it. And counteract it with some good qualities. But in any case, no matter what you do, speak the truth. And this is a very important thing, very simple thing to do really, but a very hard thing to do. Because people get into a lot kind of... And I'm not talking about just some small cheating in the IRS forms. That doesn't really mean much. But just telling things as they are. One of the most interesting things I find is that people don't tell the truth about when they will arrive. They will tell somebody, I'll be there at 8 o'clock. And they have no intention of reaching there at 8 o'clock. Everybody else is late, so what? This is lying, absolute lying. And a lot of my friends say, but I don't want to get there because even the host is not ready. Doesn't matter, you just ring the doorbell. Why? Because it is important to you, not to anyone else. So Swami Maheshananji says, please, if you think that you don't want to go to the temple because of COVID and the temples are closed, fine. You don't want to go through the Homa and all of that. You just do your own parayana. Every morning you can just take Rudram, Purusha Suktam, Durga Suktam, Medha Suktam. I try to do. These days I'm not doing Rudram. I used to do Rudram every day. Because I'm really focusing on Purusha Suktam, but I do Purusha Suktam, Medha Suktam and Durga Suktam every morning. So beautiful, my mind just gets absorbed and hopefully I speak the truth to others. And so Swamiji says it may be easy to do, but if you use a unclean Vani, it is just like buying bananas that are overripe at 50% off from Safeway and offering it to the Lord. Exactly the same thing. He says, Swami Maheshananji says, I've had people who have come to me and he says, Swamiji, I have been doing Japa Yajna and all these things for 20 years and my life is still miserable. And Swamiji says, you know what, he didn't tell him, but he knows that as soon as they get up from their parayanam, they will tell something, criticize somebody. Their Vani is impure. He says, impure Vani, what is going to do? Nothing. Anyway, so this is the... Here Swami Maheshananji says that really, in fact he says in Kali Yuga, this is the problem, that mantra siddhi is not easy. Mantra siddhi means that when you are doing some uccharanam and you're doing it with a pure heart, with a pure intention, it will not take very long where the results will come to you. This is the law, Ishvara's law. But it doesn't happen. Why? Because you introduce impurity into the whole thing. And here in Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says, Shaknoti ihaivana sodhum, Shaknoti iha eva yah sodhum prak sharirat vimokshanat kama krodho udbhavam vaigam sa yuktaha sa sukhi naraha. This is in the Bhagavad Gita. So he says, here in introducing this verse, Swami Maheshananji says that you say, I made some errors in this life, and I will correct it in my next life. I'm incapable of doing it. I'm sort of used to doing it. There's nothing I cannot change very much. I'll do it in the next one. Swamiji says that Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, listen, this kama and krodha and criticizing others and lying and so on, where you will carry it to the next life. It's not something, you have to give it up right now, or at least make lots of progress. So he says, prak sharirat vimokshanat kama krodha udbhavam vegam. He says this momentum, this rajasic momentum, that somehow the life is okay, I'm all right, I've cheated all my life and I can continue cheating, it's okay. Next life I'll do better. It's not going to go. You have to make all the and here the whole thing is that if you live a clean life, then your discovery that your ananda is yourself is possible. Otherwise it is not possible. And so the whole yajna here, the discussion about yajna is that you can do either karma yajna, you can do japa yajna, or you can do jnana yajna, but you must understand the ingredients, the dravya, the devata, and the kriya, and do it with a samagri which is pure. There is no doubt, no doubt that whatever you want, you will be able to get. This is what is called mantra siddhi. So in Rama and Krishna's time, the times were different, where lying was not a normal thing. Only some peculiar people may lie. Nowadays, lying is part and parcel of the whole life. The whole advertising industry is nothing but lying. Weight loss, you just do this and they show a picture of this fat person and a thin person and $29.99. My gosh. The whole thing is lying, and the people who create it are also lying. People who work for it are lying. What can we do? Where is the mantra siddhi possible in something like this? Anyway, I know one last thing, and I think we have enough time for this. He says, so we have talked about we have talked about the dravya, the cleanliness of it, the kriya, meanings that you should select the right scope of your yajna. If you want the whole thing, then you can say tasmat yajnat sarvahutaha. Very difficult, but that's what we have to do sooner or later. You might as well do it now. Or you can do something smaller. For right now, I don't want complete moksha from life. I don't think I can get it, this, that, or the other. I don't understand some of it. I'm confused. Whatever reasons you give, just do something. Just do some yajna with cleanliness and with good purpose and so on. So you can choose your kriya accordingly. Now comes devata. So the devata has to be chosen very carefully. Swami Maheshananji gave a very humorous example. He says there was this young woman in a house where, I remember this when I was growing up in with my grandparents in Amritsar, they will be often, I'm very lucky that way, that a lot of Mahatma will come, because my grandfather was a Vedanta teacher. He was really more of an Arya Samaji, so not really I still don't know exactly how much he understood about the self and so on, but he was a well-revered person in Amritsar. But he had a lot of Swamis that would come in the house. And I used to be a 12, 13-year-old person. And we would just pray to them, and they will bless us, and they'd give us a couple of mantras to do. Really chant this. This was very familiar to me. So this example is that of a young girl who was once visited by a Mahatma, and the Mahatma says, just chant this. You haven't studied very much, I know. So just say, Shri Krishna Govinda Hare Murari He Natha Narayana Vasudeva. Just chant this. Shri Krishna Govinda Hare Murari He Natha Narayan Vasudeva. Shri Krishna. So she said, okay, I will do that. Now, that Mahatma didn't have time to teach her who is Narayana, who is Murari, who is Govinda, who is Vasudeva. So these are all important things that we have to understand. And he went away. But she took the advice, and she was just doing this Parayana every day. Every morning she would do this. That Mahatma has told me, I'm never going to leave this. Wonderful. One day she got married. And her husband's name turned out to be Narayan. And her father-in-law was called Vasudeva. And in India, this, from those of us that are from India will know, we do not call our husband or the father-in-law or mother-in-law directly. We don't. I mean, I'm born in a modern era. Even my wife doesn't address me as Vijay. Never. She will say dear or something. But others she can talk to, that Vijay went to this, he's teaching a class, he went to this class. He will say that. But to me directly, she will never utter my word. This is 21st century. But imagine the old days, even giving the name, they won't even say, they'll say, Inhone diya in Hindi, they'll say, he gave it to me. He means who? Means my husband. So this is called indirect. So now she got married, and she can't say He Natha Narayana Vasudeva, because that was the name of her husband and the father-in-law. So she quit chanting. Then she gave birth to a small baby, and Swamiji gave the name Lallu. Sometimes these parents give very strange names, Lallu, which is not a good thing to him. So this baby's name was Lallu. So then she resumed her prayers and said, Shri Krishna Govinda Hare Murare He Natha, Lallu's father and Lallu's grandfather Namaha. So one day her grandfather, her father-in-law rather, heard her and says, what are you saying here? She says, I cannot say your name, and so I am just giving the relationship that you are the grandfather of Lallu and your son is the father of Lallu. So the father-in-law said, oh my God, how old are you? And you have not understood who the Devata is. What do they stand for? And so Swamiji says this is exactly our situation. Many often we will say, Shivoham, 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 Shivoham. You don't know much about Shiva. You don't know much about which Aham you are referring to. And so you are doing jnana yajna and you are just mumbling words without really understanding the devata. How is that going to help? It is just like Lallu's father, Namaha, Lallu's grandfather, Namaha. It's not going to help. And so, certainly in yajna and definitely in homa, if you want to make your life into a homa, you must understand. And so the homa, this is a very interesting thing, we can apply that here. In homa, it means simply taking care of the yajna is not enough. I want to cultivate. So the cultivation is a slow and steady understanding of all the three aspects, dravya, devata and kriya. Then you will see some results. Anyway, so I think I will stop here. And one last thing I would I was looking at my notes, and so one can say, well, what are the limits? How will I know that I'm doing homa to the right devata, to the devata? The proof of the pudding is that you develop a love for the devata to a point you would rather do that than anything else in your life. If you haven't reached that point, carry on with the homa. Feed your interests. But finally, you will develop a bond. So this is called upasana. That upasana will take you now. There's a huge explanation of the upasana, the process. We may not have time to do all of that because I have to go to the next aspect of it, which is sambritam prasadajyam. Kashu pashugasta chakrivayavyan aranyan gramyas chaye. Beautiful, this is a foundation of some new understanding. So we may not have that much time to talk about the upasana, but we will continue on with the unfolding of this mantra. Tasmat yajnat sarvahutaha. So with that, I will close the class today and we will take up the rest next week. Om Asato ma satgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma amritam gamaya. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Okay. So nice of you to tune in. I'm really particularly appreciating the Westerners, the non-Indians, who are. This is really more of a class where mythology, the Vedic mythology, the Hindu mythology, is also an integral part of this teaching, and the fact that you may not have a background to it. I'm just calling out the ones who are Westerners. Mary Penn, Lychee, of course, she's half Indian already. Sam Dillon, Natalia, and so it's good. I'm happy that many of you are listening to this. So Varun says, thank you for the detailed explanation of each verb. It's really a blessing to be part of such a profound teaching. Very happy that you feel that. Good. Vandana Agarwal, can you list the other suktas to recite daily? Yes, so you can really make your own choices. I am, of course, heavily influenced by Swami Dayananji's choice of what suktas is chanted in our main temple in the ashram. Not only the Sailorsburg ashram, but all the ashrams, because the Sailorsburg ashram came much later. I knew Swami Dayananji in the Rishikesh ashram in the 1960s, and then the second ashram we had was, and this was when he was still part of Swami Chinmayananji's Sandipani in Bombay, and then his own ashram, the second one was Sailorsburg, and then one in Anaikatti and one in Nagpur. And so I was very heavily influenced by what is chanted in those. So there, what is regularly chanted is Purusha Suktam and Rudram, and also generally both Medha Suktam and Durga Suktam. Those four are chanted, and then Shri Suktam is also chanted, which I don't know. I've never learned Shri Suktam. I'm hoping to do so. Just for the last couple of months or so, I've been studying Swami Tattvavidananda Ji's explanation of the Durga Suktam. Jata Veda se sunavam somam arati nitayati vedaha sanaf parshadati durgani vishwanaveva sindhundurita. All of that. And so there are 8 verses, and he has given a very good explanation of that, and I wanted to really understand his explanation, which I've been doing. So I think I did my 4th revision this morning, and so that is what I do in the Durga Suktam, and then I'm going to do the Medha Suktam also. Unfortunately, the Purusha Suktam he has not commented on, but we have found another source for that. And Rudram, of course, we have done quite extensively, Swami Dayananji's lectures, and then based on his and also Swami Maheshananji, I taught Rudram about, 8-9 years ago. And so those are the suktams that I'm very familiar with and also very devoted to. And there are lots of others. The other one which is really worth chanting is the Taittiriya Upanishad, which we did in the class, and it's pretty long, but I really enjoy chanting it as much as possible. And so those are some of the japa yajnas that one can do. All right, I think those are the only questions that unless I'm missing something. No, I think those are all. So with that, I take your leave and we'll see you next week. Om.